I probably should not write this down, because a few details could still point back to me, but I need to get it out of my head. Back then, I was the kind of person people politely called a street artist. The less polite ones called me a vandal. I never really argued with either word. I liked paint. I liked empty walls. I liked the sound of a spray can shaking in my hand and the feeling of leaving something behind in a place everyone else had forgotten. I was never interested in busy spots. Too many cameras, too many egos. The scene around my city had turned bitter, so I started looking for places nobody cared about. Old freight lines were perfect. There were miles of rusted track outside the city, hidden behind trees and warehouses. Sometimes old train cars sat there for months with peeling paint and broken doors. To me, they looked like blank pages. My friend Milo came with me most of the time. He was not really into graffiti, but he liked wandering around at night, smoking, and talking about nothing. I liked having him there. He was one of the few people who never made me feel like my time was wasted. One humid night near the start of summer, Milo and I found a dead line I had spotted on satellite view. It ran behind an abandoned storage yard and curved into a strip of woods. A long row of freight cars sat under the moonlight, silent and untouched. That was the strange part. Not one tag, not one throw-up, not even a marker scribble. Fresh canvas, Milo said. I felt excited, like we had found something that belonged to us for the night. Milo lit a joint while I pulled cans from my backpack. I tossed one to him, even though I knew he would probably just hold it and forget about it. Then I started working. The metal was cold under my palm. My first piece went up fast, just clean letters with a sharp outline. I moved to the next car, then the next. In less than half an hour, I had 3 tags lined up beside each other, and for once, I actually liked how they looked together. Milo had wandered farther down the train. He was leaning against a coupler, smoking again, the can I gave him still unopened near his shoe. I had a bad habit then. When a can ran dry, I threw it wherever. I know it was stupid, but at the time, I did not care. I shook the empty can, heard the little ball rattling inside, and tossed it back down the tracks. It clattered loudly in the dark. The sound rolled away, bounced off the train cars, and died somewhere behind us. Then another sound answered it, a heavy metallic bang. Milo stopped moving. I froze with my hand still inside my bag. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. The woods felt too still. I tried to tell myself the sound had come from an animal knocking something over, or one of my cans settling against the rails. But it had sounded too deliberate, too close. Milo whispered, "Did you hear that?" I nodded. We waited. A full minute passed. My chest felt tight, partly from nerves, partly because I had smoked more than I should have. Weed made my thoughts bend in ugly directions, and now every shadow between the cars looked like a person. I pulled out my phone and started recording, mostly because I wanted proof if someone was messing with us. "Milo," I whispered, "stay quiet." The darkness behind us shifted. Then one of my empty cans came flying out of the black and bounced hard off the gravel near my feet. Milo shouted and jumped back. A voice burst from somewhere behind the train. "Run, boys." It was a man's voice, low, rough, and amused. For half a second, my body refused to move. Then Milo grabbed my sleeve and dragged me forward. We ran along the tracks, slipping on loose stones, our backpacks thumping against our shoulders. Behind us, footsteps pounded over the gravel. The man laughed once, then yelled, "Better not fall." The voice was close enough that I could hear his breath between words. I looked back once. I saw a shape moving between the cars, bigger than either of us, but the moonlight broke him into pieces. Then came the gunshot. It cracked through the trees and punched every thought out of my head. Milo stumbled so badly I thought he had been hit, but he caught himself and kept running. My phone slipped from my fingers and hit the ground. I did not stop for it. We ran until the tracks crossed a service road, then kept running along the asphalt until the train line vanished behind the trees. By the time we reached my car, Milo's hands were shaking too badly to open the door. Neither of us spoke on the drive back. What could we have done? Call the police and explain we were trespassing and painting trains? tell them some man shot at us from an abandoned rail yard. At that age, fear and stupidity made the decision for us. We went home. For a while, I told myself the whole thing was over. It was not over. For the next 2 weeks, I tried to act normal. I went to work. I met friends. I even laughed about it once, pretending it was just another sketchy night that got out of hand. But whenever I tried to sleep, I heard that gunshot again. Not like a memory, like it was happening somewhere outside my window. Milo wanted nothing to do with the tracks after that. He deleted every picture from that night and told me I should forget it too. I should have listened. Instead, I got curious. It bothered me that the train had been clean before we touched it. It bothered me that someone had been waiting out there, hidden in the dark, and that he had thrown my own can back at me like he had been watching from the start. So one afternoon, while the sun was still high, I drove back alone. I brought a tire iron in my backpack. I did not own a gun, no matter how tough I pretended to be. The tire iron was not much, but it made me feel less helpless. The freight cars were still there. That surprised me. I had expected them to be gone, moved somewhere else by then. But they sat in the same long line, rusting under the heat. At first, everything looked normal. Then I reached the spot where I had painted. My tags were gone, not cleaned off, not crossed out, colored. Each one had been buried under a thick, ugly block of red paint. The paint had been brushed on, not sprayed. It dripped in long, dried lines down the metal, like someone had wanted to erase my work as slowly as possible. I checked the ground. No fresh cans, no footprints I could clearly read, just gravel, weeds, and the smell of hot rust. I kept walking. Several cars down, I found a sliding door pushed open just wide enough for a person to slip inside. I knew I should turn around. Every decent instinct in me said to leave. But fear can pull you away from something, and curiosity can pull harder. I climbed into the train car. The inside was empty except for one chair. It sat in the exact center of the car, facing the open door. Not an old train seat, a wooden kitchen chair. Its legs were wrapped with rope. More rope lay scattered across the floor, mixed with short lengths of chain. A strip of silver tape was stuck to one armrest. There were dark stains under the chair, but someone had scrubbed the floor around them until the metal looked raw. The smell was the worst part. Bleach. So much bleach it burned my nose and made my eyes water. It did not smell like someone had cleaned a spill. It smelled like someone had poured gallons of it across the whole floor. I stepped back, suddenly aware of how loud my breathing was inside that metal box. Then I noticed something painted on the far wall. A small red mark. Not a word, not a tag. More like a crooked symbol made of 3 lines, almost like a child's drawing of a door left open. I reached for my phone to take a picture. A metallic clang rang out from farther down the train. I did not wait for a second sound. I jumped out of the car, hit the gravel hard, and ran back the way I had come. I did not stop until I was inside my car with the doors locked and the engine running. That was the last time I touched a spray can for months. At the end of that summer, I left town again for college. I told myself the rail yard was behind me. I told myself Milo and I had stumbled onto some homeless man's camp, or some criminal hideout, or maybe just a lunatic with a gun and too much free time. None of those explanations made me feel better. By the next summer, I had mostly convinced myself to move on. Then I went home for a week. I did not want to be there. My parents had moved to a smaller place. Most of my old friends had either left town or become people I did not recognize, and Milo barely answered my messages anymore. To kill time, I drove around the places we used to go when we were younger. One of those places was a set of tracks near the river. As teenagers, we used to hop slow freight trains there. It was reckless and illegal, but at that age, we treated danger like proof that we were alive. The tracks ran through a patch of woods, entered a long, straight tunnel, came out into a small clearing, and then crossed a huge bridge over the water. I had not done anything like that in years. That day, I told myself I would only walk the line for nostalgia. Then a freight train came rumbling through the trees, slow enough that the old version of me woke up. I stood in the brush while the engine passed. Car after car clanked by. I waited until I saw an easy ladder, jogged alongside it, grabbed on, and swung myself up. The movement came back to me faster than I expected. Wind hit my face. The rails hummed under my shoes. For a moment, I felt young and stupid again. Then the train entered the tunnel. The world went black. The tunnel swallowed every sound except the roar of the train. I kept one hand locked around the ladder and leaned close to the car. The tunnel was straight, so I could see the exit ahead, a pale circle of daylight shaking in the distance. Halfway through, a flash of white light burst somewhere ahead of me. It was quick, like a camera flash, then gone. Before I could understand it, something grabbed my ankle. Came a hand. Cold fingers clamped around my leg and yanked hard. My foot slipped off the rung. My shoulder twisted. For one horrible second, I hung sideways from the ladder while the train dragged me through the dark. I screamed and kicked blindly. Go! The hand let go. I scrambled upward, chest scraping against metal. Then another hand slapped against my calf from below, missing its grip by inches. Someone was in the tunnel. Maybe more than one person. I climbed near the top of the ladder, shaking so badly I could barely hold on. The train burst into daylight, and I jumped before I thought about the landing. I hit the gravel, rolled, and lay there gasping. The train kept moving. It crossed the bridge and disappeared over the river. Only then did I understand my problem. My car was on the other side of the tunnel. The bridge was too long to cross safely on foot. If another train came while I was out there, I would have nowhere to go. The woods on either side were steep and tangled, dropping toward the water. The only way back was through the tunnel. I sat there for a long time with a rock in my hand, staring into that black opening. I tried calling Milo. No answer. I tried another friend, but the call failed. Panic and shame tangled together in my head. Finally, I stood up. The tunnel felt colder when I stepped inside. My footsteps echoed against the concrete. I kept close to the wall, holding the rock so tightly my knuckles hurt. Water dripped somewhere in the dark. I listened for breathing, footsteps, whispers. At the halfway point, I heard clicking. Soft, wet, human. Click, click, click. It came from somewhere ahead of me, then seemed to move to my left, then behind me. I stopped walking. The clicking stopped too. My throat closed up. I pulled out my phone, turned on the flashlight, and shouted, "Stay away from me." My voice bounced through the tunnel. Answer. I do not know why I said the next part. Maybe because fear makes bad actors out of everyone. I have a weapon. I opened a video app and found the loudest gunshot sound effect I could. I turned the volume all the way up and played it. The fake shot exploded through the tunnel. The echo made it sound real enough to scare me. Then I ran. I ran harder than I had ever run in my life. Phone flashlight bouncing in my hand, rock still clutched in the other. I expected fingers to close around my ankles again. I expected to be tackled from behind, but nothing touched me. When I burst out of the tunnel, I kept going until I reached the trees near my car. Only then did I turn back. Deep inside the tunnel, another flash went off. For 1 second, it lit the tracks. Two figures stood side by side in the darkness. In tall, Joe. One much smaller, Yamami. Both facing me. Then the light vanished. A scream followed me from inside the tunnel. It was human, but twisted into something raw and animal-like. It rose and cracked and scraped against the walls until I could feel it in my teeth. I got in my car and drove away, shaking. After that, I gave up everything connected to the tracks. No painting, no exploring, no late-night walks through abandoned places. I even stopped hanging around people who made danger sound romantic. Years passed. I finished school badly, then fixed myself enough to get steady work. Eventually, I took a maintenance job with the city transit system. It was not glamorous, but it paid, and there was something honest about it. I repaired lights, cleaned platforms, checked equipment, and spent long hours in places most people only hurried through. The subway at night has its own personality. During the day, it belongs to crowds. At night, it becomes a different world. The lights buzz, the tiles sweat. Every distant train sounds like thunder trapped underground. I told myself I was not afraid of tunnels anymore. Then, about 2 years into the job, I was assigned to a quiet station near the old waterfront line. The platform had been almost empty all evening. After midnight, even the usual late commuters vanished. It was just me, a cart of supplies, and the long, black mouth of the tunnel at the end of the platform. I was mopping near the stairs when I heard it. A stone on metal. The sound had come from inside the tunnel. At first, I told myself it was nothing. Transit tunnels make noises all the time. Pipes knock. Rats move through trash. Old rails settle like someone tapped them with a hammer. I went back to work. 10 minutes later, the clang came again. This time, it was louder. I gripped the mop handle and stared into the tunnel. The platform lights reached only a few yards past the edge. I took 2 steps closer, then stopped. Some part of me was back in the freight yard, smelling bleach. Another part was in the river tunnel, feeling fingers close around my ankle. Then a child's voice called out, "Kill me." My skin went cold. The voice came from the tunnel. A boy, maybe. Young, scared, close enough to hear but far enough that I could not see him. I should have called it in immediately. I know that now. But my first thought was simple and stupid. A kid was on the tracks. I stepped down from the platform and onto the service path beside the rails. "Where are you?" I shouted. No answer. I moved forward, one hand on the wall. "Can you hear me?" The child's voice answered. Yes. I froze. Something about the tone was wrong. Not the fear, the timing. It came too neatly, like someone repeating a line after waiting for their cue. "What happened?" I asked. Then the voice said, "Keep walking." I did not move. "Tell me what happened first, Kitty." Another pause. "Please," the voice said. "Keep walking." My eyes adjusted. Shapes separated from the dark. Rails, cables, a maintenance box, a curve in the wall. Then I saw him. A small figure stood up ahead on the tracks. But he was not alone. Behind him, half hidden against the tunnel wall, stood a taller shape. Eerie still, watching. Every nerve in my body screamed at me to run, but I forced myself not to turn too quickly. I backed away one step, then another. The child's voice changed. "Wait," he called. "Where are you going?" The taller figure shifted. That was enough. I ran back to the platform, climbed up, grabbed my radio, and called for help. My voice shook as I gave the station name. Police and transit supervisors arrived fast. They shut down the line and swept the tunnel with flashlights. I stayed on the platform, trying not to sound insane. They found no man. They found no child. But they did find a shoe, one small sneaker, lying beside the rail, about 40 yards inside the tunnel. They also found a wooden chair hidden behind a service alcove. The legs had rope tied around them. The floor around it smelled faintly of bleach. I did not tell anyone about the freight yard at first. I could barely say it out loud to myself. But when one of the officers showed me a photo from inside the tunnel, my stomach dropped. On the wall behind the chair, painted in red, was the same crooked symbol I had seen years earlier inside that abandoned train car. 3 lines. 3 lines, like a door left open. After that, everything became interviews, reports, and questions I could not answer. They asked if I had enemies. They asked if I knew anyone who might target transit workers. I was sure of what I saw. I was less sure of what it meant. The official explanation was that someone had been hiding in the tunnels and fled before police arrived. Maybe the shoe was old. Maybe the chair had been dragged there by squatters. Maybe the bleach covered some unrelated smell. Everyone wanted the simple version. I wanted it too. But the simple version did not explain the red paint over my tags. It did not explain the chair in the freight car. It did not explain the hands in the river tunnel, the 2 silhouettes, or the child's voice telling me to keep walking. I quit transit work a month later. People told me I was overreacting. Maybe I was. Maybe all of it was a chain of unrelated incidents my mind stitched together because fear loves patterns. But I do not believe that. I think there was a man, or maybe more than one, using forgotten rail lines like hunting grounds. I think he knew how guilt worked. He knew most people would follow a child's voice. He knew trespassers would be too scared to call police. He knew tunnels made people blind, and trains made people disappear. Sometimes I still dream about that last tunnel, the small figure standing in front, the tall one waiting behind him. And the voice, calm as a script, telling me to keep walking. I have not gone near an abandoned rail line since. I do not paint anymore. I do not explore. I do not take shortcuts through tunnels, even crowded ones. When I hear metal strike metal in the distance, my body reacts before my mind does. And late at night, when the city gets quiet enough, I swear I can still hear that same sound. Yo! Then the voice. Keep walking.